Bashidele, Kenjenla, Kempula, Lama, Kunchokla. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Should we start with the prayers? Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha and Dharma and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
诸佛正法圣众会，直至菩提我归依，我以布施诸功德，为利有情，愿成佛。诸佛正法圣众会，直至菩提我归依，我以布施诸功德，为利有情，愿成佛。诸佛正法圣众会，直至菩提我归依，我以布施诸功德，为利有情，愿成佛。一切众生之施惠，根器不同而见之，共与不共大小乘，其请殷勤转法轮。
Tadi dia apa deh? Dan tadi so pasal.
他们给自己小队的从一些人的对这公用的实践中国头的这个小队为什么很多人上网这个而且上天带了那个他们把这个跟不好他们说这完这种感觉不管的是那些不从那里长久时间对层面上的话更大天把这个半天二的下来不管的老家天嘛都过来就把人先从这里面这个用的长久生活中 长久身体行动起不来球，结果跟这样子，那么他们对面确实没让我球，撒当南的用的那多呢，都是强烈空帮球。我说你把他多样买啥行吗？
啦。
你把他多什么多的，多的的。
而且可以，카레 코.
这样，那就。
그래서 무슨 싫고 말이야.
건도.
아, 건도.
抱歉，今天开始稍微晚了一点耽误大家的时间，因为刚刚赶着把初译的初稿呢传给大家。
So then we continue yesterday's teachings in the text Udambara Blossoms.
昨天我们继续讲昨天所讲到的优昙婆罗花开第2页的部分。
Yeah, so we came to almost the end of page 2. I think we finished with meditative absorption is also one's mind.
关掉了现在这那把了，他把这些那把了，他把他把定义这他把乔沃斯他把定义这现在这的，这当心理呢，他现在这的呀，我真的定义这层了，他这里。 他把出证了吧，然后下面是吧？出证了吧的，这种出证那这个。
各位如果看群组的话，微信的群组已经发出去的 ，LINE 的群组可能要等会后再发出去给各位，很抱歉。电脑出了点问题，所以就花了一点时间。我们可以看到这个我发给各位的讲义的第4页最后一段，就是昨天讲到的部分。
放假在念不参体，让三八线嘛，我们这边老早就放假是那个念不是那个从马上是那个，这老早就不得是，我从多真的，大家的，到这里，没啥人就是从我的，给起地是没办法，给我小的情况那老公，那起地那给我就给起地是没办法，历史帮是没办法。给我就是要帮助，给我就是要这个嘛，我晓得情况，你老上面是，年波这些东西，从退休，年波这些东西，他晓得情况，这些东西就，原来去这个非常重要。我这里但年波现在晓得情况，那点怎么做一个嘛的，没事吧？我打球给我这边那这东西给我这边非常simple，他没给做什么非常simple，我听年波这种晓得情况，你老讲原来去的那个听那路去念波的强度，你这边念没给就是让用念波电路多嘛来送的。下面推送上节讲的没在谁办的，是下面的推送上节他们就给通给了，这样通完是把可能也通完，那通完是我不通不了嘛，所以你们俩听的是那路通，我真通完是，我这也是。
那这一段的中文我先念一次，同样比这些气是上乘禅定的训练，因为他们能够生当禅定与智慧现起时，所有的障碍和缺陷、疾病、伤害、障碍和迷惑的影响都已被舍弃，慈悲心和菩提心就现前了。对外在气世间的形成和内在的有情众生的执着已被舍弃。三智在心识中升起至某种程度，而心能够安住于其中，这也被称为定，因为它是处理烦恼的结果，所以又称上乘的修行。由于它是由舍弃烦恼所留下的结果，因此也被称为是对觉知承诺的誓愿支持。那这个中文翻译的稿呢，会在这个法教的过程当中，再一次跟着上师的法教而再修订，最后再发给各位。我听就从我说也行吧，从把听见他拉说是我，我不知道怎么讲。
So yesterday we have said that so this within this single pointed mind is the training of the superior mind or meditative absorption, or which is the training of samadhi. And so basically what this training of samadhi or single pointedness really refers to is the training the mind in shamatha, calm abiding. So first the mind has to become calm. And so then within that, then it says, if you practice in this way, then also the training of superior ethical discipline is also one's own mind, and that of meditative absorption is also one's mind. What this is to say is that that actually by abiding in the state of samadhi, a meditative state of absorption, within that actually also naturally contained is the ethical discipline, the training of ethical discipline. And so ethical discipline generally means that one practices the 10 virtues and one abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions. And ethical discipline is to be practiced in all the vehicles, also in the Bodhisattva vehicle, also in the secret mantra vehicle. And for example, the Gongchik says that there is never a time when ethical discipline would not apply. It always is to be practiced, always is necessary. And so the key point of ethical discipline is to discern, at kind of a discerning ability between what should be done and what should be given up. But then regarding the ethical discipline being also contained within samadhi, so Milarepa had said that when one practices Mahamudra, when resting in a state of Mahamudra, the 10 virtuous actions are not to be practiced and the 10 non-virtuous actions are not to be abandoned. And so that is because Mahamudra inherently is like the inherent antidote to all negativity. it within that state, then everything is included within that. There's no deliberate abandoning or practicing within that state. And so, of course, generally we abandon and we practice, but what also the text here is saying is that this is also all one's mind. So what is abandoned is within one's mind, and what is practiced is within one's mind. And therefore, if one abides within a state of Mahamudra, then there is no way that the 10 non-virtues will arise. So just naturally, the mind is in a virtuous state. And so then continues, so therefore, having resolved that all the things to be relinquished and their antidotes apart from being one's own mind alone do not exist, mind itself is not ever been seen and never will be seen by any of the Buddhas after 3 times. Even the Buddhas after 3 times have not seen it. And the only way to see or to indicate and understand the nature of the mind is through your own personal practice, your own personal experience. And then that which is referred to as establishing certainty with regard to the true meaning of wisdom is the training in superior wisdom. Through this sole realization of the intrinsically pure nature of the mind, all the momentary and ultimate qualities arise and all faults are destroyed. In regards to this, the Blessed One has said, so here it doesn't mention which text he said that in, but it's the same text that we already mentioned yesterday. It's the condensed Prajnaparamita. So there, the Blessed One, Buddha, had said, all the phenomena of bliss and happiness experienced by bodhisattvas, Shravakas, and Pratyeka Buddhas, gods, and all beings, all of it arises from the supreme perfection of wisdom. So also it is said in the entering the bodhisattva's way of life that in terms of samadhi and cultivating the perfection of wisdom, the supreme perfection of wisdom, is that the wisdom arises in combination with shamatha. So it is a mind that perfectly possesses shamatha. And so this mind, this insight that perfectly possesses shamatha is what pacifies all the afflictive emotions. And so this is the mind, as it says here, all the qualities arise and all the faults are destroyed.
那么这边呢，基本上呢，就是我们如果能是修无上心，也就安住在禅定的三摩地之中，这就是我们所谓的修止或者是修定。那首先呢，我们心必须要安住在一个非常宁静平等的一个安稳的这个状态，而能够有无上的这个持戒。那所谓的戒，跟我们这个定都不离自心。当我们能够安住自心的时候，自然有持戒的这个行十善、舍十不善的功德。一切都是在持戒之中。我们不管修哪一乘的法呢，不管是声闻缘觉乘、菩萨乘或者金刚乘呢，都不离这个戒律。我们这个吉田中公祖师在正法义供起里面也讲到说，修行的这个持戒是修行，永远是修行的必要条件。所以我们自然能够了知，在定中自然能够了知何者应做，何者不应做，因为我们都安住在三摩地当中。那么在这个弥勒巴里面讲到这个在大手印的部分呢，讲到安住在当我们能够安住的时候，自然不行十善，也不舍十恶。为什么这样子讲呢？当我们安住在大手印的状态，本来它就是对治一切的一些不善行或者一些邪恶，自然就更没有造作这种作意这件事情，不会特别去修或者是特别去舍，那自然也没有舍弃或者是修持，因为这些就都是来自于我们自己的内心，不管是修持或舍弃，都是来自于自心。所以如果我们能够安住在大印的状态之中，就自然能够不行十善，自然在十善的这个境界。这个就是这个 继续念第5页开始。简而言之，这会破坏所有暂时和就近的过患，它使所有的功德能够升起，是穿过轮回之海的解脱之船，因为这是唯一一个可以保护所有恐惧的归依处，所以以一心一意的能够安住在其中，也就是最上乘的心的训练或者是禅定。如果能够这样子的修行，上乘的戒也是自己的心戒，入定也是自己的心。那第2段以下安立的话，那自然能够舍弃一切，这就是对治的良药。除了自己的心之外，一切都不存，而心本身是不可见、未曾见的。三世诸佛的任意一个佛也都不曾见过。怎么说呢？所谓的无所见，即是见的本性。所谓就是说没有一个外在的东西你可以见的，它本质本来就这样子。所谓对智慧真实义的这个建立的确定性，就是修习无上的这个智慧，透过我们这种对心的本质清净的唯一了悟，而能够升起所有刹那和就近的功德，所有的过患自然有的都被摧毁了。因此世尊说，菩萨、声闻、缘觉、天人以及一切众生所经历的一切乐的现象，都源自于无上圆满的智慧。简而言之，透过舍弃烦恼而能升起无烦恼心，从无烦恼心而能升起完全纯净的智慧。这个是刚刚英文口译英娜所念的这个文。那如果没有拿到这个文的没关系，这个事后我再补发给各位，而且这只是初稿而已。
So tinanata sumutu.
听到有什么
？tinanata你开始说，tinanata有嘛了？
有嘛的，没来的，这里装嘛对不对
？Yeah. So in the Samatha Bhaja prayer, it says, if you recognize that you are a Buddha, not recognizing it, you are a sentient being wandering in samsara. So that is when you see your true nature, you see the Buddha. That is when you see the Buddha. Milarepa had said that having practiced with diligence, having practiced meditation with diligence, the mind becomes subdued, and to the subdued mind, all appearances, all outer appearances appear as illusions. And this is how I became liberated from the disease of self-grasping. So when one practices well, this is how you see the Buddha, or the nature of the mind, and it cannot be seen in any other way or expressed in any other way. Therefore, Achilopa also said to his disciple Naropa, this self-knowing primordial awareness is something that cannot, nor can it be conceived of through thoughts. It is something you have to know yourself, Naropa. You have to experience it yourself. So it is nothing that can be shown. The true nature cannot be shown. So only when you see your true nature, you experience the nature of the mind, or the Buddha.
他这里嘛，这里的牛毛把帮完了，牛毛没把。
那么在普贤王如来祈愿文里面有讲到，如果我们能够了知即为佛，众生于轮回大海中沉没。那当这讲的就是当我们见到自信，这个就是佛。那弥勒巴祖师他也曾经讲过，说我精进的修禅定，我心能够安住，这种安住的心呢，一切外相成幻，而能够解脱一切的我执。那这个就是见心的本性即见如来，就是见佛，就是佛。那在过去六巴祖师跟他的弟子那罗巴祖师也有这样子的讲，当我们本知一切的这种本知一切本处智是不可思量也不可言续的，只能靠自己的体验。那当我们见到自性，自然就了知，这个就是佛。也就是说，这种境界我们是不能这种凡 凡夫的这个智慧来思量，也想不出来，也不肯用凡夫的语言来描述的，只能有自己的修行的经验跟体会，才能够证得了知。
我当然在当晚没写在学校，这么个人大把种在当晚上是过上没上，那跑了当上，这个个人是很大钱呢。这能跑这个样嘛，相当能跑在了哇。我也把它能跑去网上的东西，能跑答案是就嘛，网上的东西。我语现在归语没写这东西，归语没写现在这样子，语气啊嘛是语这个俺们学过去现在语这样的这有了哇。别想着这种家伙在说的，别当晚忙不，他们那里头没写在去给人上的。没写在这个地方，公园当晚早上不修，忙不去，那这个从别个来看是的，那么早上不忙不进，怎么来的？发现当晚说的，要那说的，没写去过的这，那这种可能要加过。
那刚刚那个普贤王如来祈愿文那个句子，就是若觉此性即是佛，无名众生轮回堕。这是在第2段的这个倒数第3、第4行那里。达谦仁波切也经常引用这一句：若觉此性即是佛，无名众生轮回堕。
对不啦嘛的，春节意思，我这春节大地上当晚忙不到早进不进的，对不上啊东北哪了？你知道去哪里玩？知道啥鬼的事？对，我这准备节目也是，我这准备节目多嘛，俺查是要嘛的，是了，去哪去的咱们。
没了，北京那么俺查是要嘛的。
我这准备节目多嘛，也说是俺的什么来的？针对这，因为这种俺家的了，这种大过去我去说这话，这有些了，我提给谁没上当了。这语嘛，其实他讲那个语嘛，就是当多么的。针对大家呢，说去，但是针对这经常跑出去的，这的送这个有什么进来送呢？买因为那么多个多名啊，这下过来是。多米现在，但这什么就变成像这说的，都关米现在讲。那这说什么的？
多半没这个嘛的。
多米现在他妈就别什么就别在东半年一些说逻辑东半年我们这里什么的。
你没了，这把这开始送的准备节目给老妈说的，准备节目说的。
准备节目的，准备节目在弄个别的片看到的，这种建议了。
哦，弄个别节目。第几看了这个吧？
这个这种建议是，我们在新报道的，那么来的，就那这那么讲，啊，准备节目那么要说啊，是吧？
这里这边过来看了松松。
这不是俺东不是，去哪里俺这吧啥的，去哪大家从古典建议在，俺们我讨是老了。去哪俺这吧啥，他去哪去小可是有些都要有嘛的是。我到东面现在来听什么？我这里按地是路，那他是去讲这个，他能上来给我。
So then it says in short, by relinquishing the afflictions, the mind that is the essence of the afflictions is born. And so that is the mind, from that mind that is without afflictions, the arising of completely pure wisdom dawns. So the absence of afflictive emotions, the mind that is free of all afflictive emotions is the wisdom mind. So the wisdom dawns when there's an absence of afflictions. And so now if you're thinking, these are not the piss instructions that I requested, I don't need all this that I didn't request on the 3 baskets and the 4 trainings, do not take ownership of such thoughts of grasping to I and self that have arisen all of a sudden. So then there is these thoughts that arise in our mind. We think that there is this specific instructions that I have requested, but this is not exactly the instructions that I have requested. So that's why I don't need this instruction, a certain instruction. So there's these thoughts arising in the mind. And so don't cling to these kind of thoughts. whatever instruction it is necessary if you receive this instruction. The point is that do not be afflicted, do not grasp at this I is grasping thought of I that needs to, for example, receive only this certain instruction and a special instruction and so on. So, and then it says, do not let them run wild, and without being deterred, hold them intently while resting in no distraction, so that the thoughts become the absence of thoughts. So this term here, to not let them run wild and without being deterred. Also it could mean something like, do not become like kind of complacent or a bit arrogant about that you have received, but hold the practice, rest in non-distraction continuously without holding on to such thoughts. For example, this is one story about Rajungpa, Milarepa's disciple. Rajungpa, one time he traveled to India, and then he brought back many very special instructions that he had received there from some of the great masters in India. And so he felt a little bit prideful about that, and he kind of thought that when I'm back and present these instructions to Milarepa, his guru, I have to really present it in this really very extraordinary special way. First of all, I endured all these hardships. I'm going to India and I brought back all of these great instructions. So basically he intended to make himself look really good. But then Milarepa, he cut him down right there. For example, when he said that I've met this which was a Dakini who supposedly lived for 500 years. He was 500 years old. And so he met this Dakini who was 500 years old, and Milarepa said, what's the big deal? I've already met her before. I'm her best disciple. And then he taught about there's another master, Debön, I guess, Samadongpo, something. And so it's also a very famous master. And he also met this master. Then Milarepa said, well, I have a much stronger connection to him, than you do. So don't develop any pride. Don't be so arrogant. So that's kind of the meaning here. You don't let your thoughts run wild, and you're is undeterred. More like you don't get all puffed up. And so then it says while resting in non-distractions, so that the thoughts become the absence of thoughts. So regarding this absence of thoughts, the absence of thoughts here means that not to have no thoughts, but to abide in the natural state, an uncontrived natural state. That's all that's necessary. So without contrivance, meaning that you don't label emptiness, like saying this is the emptiness I've developed and so on. Not any such labels, you just abide naturally.
那这边讲到说我们的心这个没时候我们智慧自然语呢，这个接下来他就继续念，就是我们这些呢这不是我要求的口诀传授，我不需要所有我在三学和四习中没有要求的东西。那这个简天松公主是在这边讲到说，不要去制作这种升起的这个我跟自我的念头，不要让他们不受拘束的肆意乱为乱驰骋。当妄念升起时，专心的看着他们，不分心的安住，使思绪变成无念，让业气自己净化，烦恼自然无力。当我们能长时保任无念，这就是所谓的习念之止，或者习念之定。如果你将机或者是地理解为完全止息的任运现起，那么既然你已经了解执着是不实的，那么无妄无念的本然存在的心就会自己现起，因而来去无间断，就是智者所谓的安住。 那么这个有人听到这种法教之后，可能会讲说，这并不是我所要求的，我要你教我3学或者是4习啊，那这是什么样的口诀传授呢？那个景天松公主师就讲说，我们不要去执着这些外在的这个名相，不要执着是我，或者是你只要某一种法教，那不要对自己所得到的能够自得意满的是因循苟且。那在这边他就提到的这主本提到的一个这个过去惹琼巴祖师的故事。那惹琼巴其实也是噶当仁波切的前世之一。当然惹琼巴他是从印度回来的时候呢，他带回了许多大师的这个法教，那自己内心就升起骄慢之心。那他想要在他上师就是弥勒日巴之前呢，有所表现，让自己能够看起来很棒。那弥勒日巴祖师当然知道他弟子的这个心意，所以他在一有这种骄慢心升起的时候，他就要在根源就把它斩断。当他显露出一些骄慢心的时候，这个比如说惹琼巴讲到说，我遇到这一个500岁的空行母，那弥勒日巴讲说，那又有什么，我早就遇见他了。那惹琼巴要讲说，我遇到的这个 Depo Sangye Dampo 这个大师，那弥勒日巴说，那也没有什么，我跟他的连结比你跟他的连结更紧密更深远。所以呢，这边讲的就是不让我们自己内心呢到处驰骋或者自妄自大。那所谓的无念，就是要安住于自然的一个不造作的一个状态，不立任何的名相，只是一个很自然的安立在那里，安住在那样子的本然状态。这个是他所提到的一个修行之方。
Are self-purified, the afflictions are rendered powerless, and by sustaining the thoughts for a prolonged time, it becomes what is referred to as calm abiding of pacifying thoughts.
是刚刚伊娜念的这一句是我们已经念过的，就是让业气呢自己能够净化然后呢，那烦恼自然就无力。那么当我们能够长时在保任在这种无念的这个状态，这就是所谓习念的这个止，或者是习念的这个定。
Abide in this natural, uncontrived, a thought-free state, and then naturally the karmic winds will become purified, and when they become purified, then the afflictive emotions naturally are rendered powerless, and they can't affect you any longer. So when you stay within this, when you practice for a long time, then all conceptuality comes down, and so this non-conceptual state is what we call shaman. And Milarepa explained shamatha as so it's calm and abiding. So the calm, he said, is the calming down of the thoughts and the afflictive emotions, and the abiding is to abide within the your authentic nature.
所以当我们在这是一种这种定呢，就是一种无造作的境界。它在这种状态之下，我们自然而然，我们业风就得以净化，那烦恼就自然没有力，再也不可能影响我们。如果我们长时能够如此修呢，安住在此，那么这个在这种无念的状态，那这就是所谓的止，或者是所谓的定。弥勒日巴对于止讲是说，我们念头止息，烦恼止息，那不在这个到处纷飞。那所谓的定呢，就是安住在这个本来之际，本来之境。
我真的东莞下没家，方面东莞下没家，小马子也没家了。东莞穷的你妈这个他也不起呀。陈主任都有的是吧？我唐部在这阶段的他推荐的享受先是 或者他考虑的是呢，他他妈这样子的是就他们做我的一做的是一做多个的是一做多是上次就这样的就那他们去建议的是准备在了那边是看看我们去的了，这是真的知道你的 drops， 我看我们就那做我的准备的是。准备在了那边是准备是所以准备的话就那去建议准备的是准备在了那边是马上开始的了，这样子按照个的讲的话，我这里天他唐伯的强调什么很重要，强调什么咱们基本都是唐伯强调什么说呢？强调什么咱们基本基础表，我这强调什么呢？这开始是呢，他小给也拿唐伯所写的的现在这个。然后说说你写的那个，知道吗？这个你写的那个，他提纲了强调情况呢，是什么回事？开始是呢，就这样子开始是呢，他写嘛，你的你口的那个，这种提送的，那些什么，你看对不对？你看求就过了。我真对送的，真这么什么，我把东西抢着个是，这么什么，我把东西抢着，别想呢，新干技巧的，新干是节律，咋走东把的往这的设计，那是送嘛了不？我那送嘛是东把的我的多了。我东把的听着真难东把掐到个意思，不懂呀。
ที่ชาตินังตรงปะวะที่สุดนะ
所以这别掐新干发地，啥东西这东把的我在有了，我说别讲，你的上场青铜器就有了，那种嘛。我的确东，青铜器穷就有啊，其他东西都。我听着东把的，我这咋什么听着东把掐到个意思？我听你。他东把听囊，他东把的木料听囊了，唐不头的我在路呢，这地方面的路，也面的其他三周的使用嘛的，这头的看啥我的嘞，晓得你就是那唐不面的我在路呢哈，接头接路呢，头长都使其他没得抢的是，头没法其他没能我抢的是。
Then, so there's one instruction by elsewhere by Jigten Sumgen on how to to practice in how a practitioner can practice on a given day, like on basically a whole day. So the day begins with the preliminary of bodhicitta. And so then as you get up with bodhicitta, he says that for the sake of mindfulness, you should one engages in all activities with one's left side, meaning that like getting out with the left foot and doing something with the left hand and so on. So it's like all activities are left-sided. And so then also one doesn't let a day pass by without having confessed. So if any negativity has arisen on a day, then without skipping a day, without letting the day pass by, one should confess that negativity. So regarding the, first of all, the motivation of bodhicitta, so all the Dharma, mainly all the Dharma comes down to the mind. It's all about the mind. The Buddha himself said that all phenomena depend on conditions, which is our aspiration. So the condition here is our aspiration, our motivation. And whatever aspiration prayer one makes will be accomplished. So everything that's accomplished is accomplished in dependence on an aspiration. So first, the day begins with the preliminary of bodhicitta, and that's what that has to be practiced until it really naturally arises. And so there's one key instruction on that by Jigten Sumgen, and that is now when in the morning, in the early morning when the sun just arises, or whenever you wake up from sleeping, it is very profound to at that time. And the reason for that is that during the night time while you're sleeping, the winds all gather through the channels into your heart chakra, which leaves the channels otherwise empty. All the other channels are empty. Everything is, all the energies is scattered into the heart chakra, and the rest of the channels is empty throughout the night when you're sleeping. For example, it's just like a grass. When you cut some grass, maybe it's empty inside. Basically, it's like a straw, like an empty straw. So just like that, all the channels are completely empty. And so because they are empty, you're like an empty vessel. And you want to pour something medicinal into that empty vessel in the morning, because when you empty, or when you fill your empty channels with poison right away in the morning, then even if later on you try to put in there some medicine, the medicine really can't stay. It will be just pushed aside by the poison. It has no power to stay. And similarly, conversely, when you start the day with filling your channels with something medicinal like bodhicitta, then likewise anything negative really has no room, no place to stay. It basically, negativity are rendered powerless.
这边讲说这个吉田松公主是在其他地方讲到这个我们如何做一天的修持。一天开始之前呢，我们首先要行这个前行的这个菩提心，我们要保持正念，那一切都由左边来开始，就是说从左边起床，用左手来做事等等。那么每天要忏悔，每一天一天都不要空过，就是每天有做错的事情就要忏悔。所以一开始呢，就是由菩提心的这个发心开始。事实上，一切的法教都不离于这个心，所以呢，佛陀曾说，一切的外相就是我们发心的这个因缘。所以一切事情之所以能够成就，都来自于我们的发心。所以如果一天我们开始是从菩提心开始，那么我们要这样子反复的训练自己，一直到我们自然而然一起床，一开始就是自然会有菩提心的这个念头。所以呢，他提到说，一天就是清晨的时候，太阳刚升起的时候，或者是我们刚起床的时候，这个是特别重要的这个时刻。怎么说呢？因为我们在睡觉的时候呢，一切的气都进入这个我们心轮当中，其他的脉都空空如也。在睡觉的时候，就好像一个空心中空的这个道感一样。那你呢？我们也就像一个空如也的这个容器。那如果我们在一清晨就把这个容器注入毒药的话，有毒的思想的话，那么即使后来我们再加上一些解药，也不能把这些解药留住在这个容器里面。相反的，如果我们一开始先放入菩提心的话，那么一切的过患自然就没有那个失去力量来影响我们的这个力量的。这个是吉田松公主是对一天如何修持的一个教言。
If in the morning you fill your empty channels with the toxic poisons of attachment or anger or ignorance, that all your channels will be pervaded by that throughout the day. And so then wherever these kind of wind energies, these negative wind energies will pervade. And wherever the wind energies pervade, they will also pervade the drops, the bodhicitta drops. They will pervade all your channels, the 3 main channels and the 4 chakras. So you become completely permeated by negativity throughout the day. And then even if you do something virtuous throughout the day, the power of that will be significantly reduced. It can't be so strong because you already didn't start by filling your channels with something positive.
所以呢，如果我们清晨就一开始就注入这个贪嗔痴三毒呢，在我们的心念之中，那么我们整天我们的脉里面都有这些毒药，那我们的气也安住在这个三脉四轮之中，也是都是这种很不好的这个气。那我们自己的菩提心地在三脉四轮中也都是很负面的，整天都很负面。即使你在这一天当中行善，它行善的效果也是会大打折扣的。
And so the medicine for that is bodhicitta. If you practice bodhicitta, then this is what will happen. So that our channels pervade, the winds pervade, they will also pervade the subtle elements with bodhicitta. And in that way, your channels become bodhicitta channels, and the winds become bodhicitta winds, and so on, the elements, bodhicitta elements. So everything, the four chakras and the three channels, the main channels, all become having the nature of bodhicitta, will have the nature of bodhicitta. And then throughout your day, whatever virtuous activity you engage in will become much more powerful. It will become really an activity of bodhicitta.
那如果说我们这个药这个良药对治的良药是什么呢？就是菩提心。所以如果我们修菩提心的话，那其他的这个成分也就会跟善的成分也会跟随着来。当我们这有菩提心的时候，我们的脉啊，我们的气啊，种种的生理的成分的都是充满了一种菩提心。那我们的三脉跟四轮也都有菩提心的这个本质，所以我们整天所做的行善也就会更加有力，更加有威力，都是因为菩提心的作用的缘故。
In the also the entering the Bodhisattva's way of life, the Bodhicharya Avatara, it says, so this transformation is just like this application of bodhicitta and transforms just like alchemy. So it's like transforming iron into gold. So just like that, what is impure, what is negative, all becomes precious, like a precious jewel, the nature of bodhicitta. So that's why it's important to make sure bodhicitta becomes stable and firm, and always hold on to bodhicitta, because then that gives the mind power. And this is actually the main reason why and how the Buddha was able to attain enlightenment.
那我们在入行论里面有讲到说，这个如何转化这个一切这个菩提心。那么这个就好像我们的这个菩提心的转化，就好像一个炼金术一样，把一个不纯的这个铁，把它炼成珍贵的这个金子一般，这就是菩提心的珍贵。所以呢，我们应该要好好的来修持菩提心，让这个菩提心在我们心中能够很稳固，让我们自己内心更加有力。这个事实上就是佛陀能够修行得证悟的这个最主要的原因，也都是在这个菩提心的修持。
So then how, if you wonder, how does everything become virtuous if you cultivate bodhicitta? So when you cultivate bodhicitta, then naturally that leads to the temporary happiness of this life, and ultimately it becomes the cause of attaining complete enlightenment. In the Bodhicharyavatara also it says that the difference between a virtue practiced with or without bodhicitta. So it says if you practice virtue without bodhicitta, then the results become just like a water tree, or like apparently a banana tree. And so that kind of tree, it grows once, and once it has bloomed and grown fully, it just withers and dies, and it will not bloom again. So just like that, if you have no bodhicitta, if you cultivate bodhicitta, then this merit remains until you attain enlightenment. And then all the happiness you experience, this temporary happiness of this life, will just kind of happen as a byproduct, just naturally. Milarepa said that as I am striving toward final and lasting bliss and happiness, the worldly happiness arises just as a byproduct naturally.
那么如何说菩提心是一切成就的这个善因呢？我们在这个修菩提心的时候，我们暂时呢就能够在此生得到安乐，究竟呢是得到证悟的。那入菩萨行论也有讲到说，善行没有菩提心的善行，就好像一株这个水树或者香柱一样。那你当然它会长大，但是长大开花一次之后，它就会枯萎，没有办法再成长了，就是来年没有办法再成长。可是如果说我们修持菩提心的话，那么我们这个功德呢，就可以一直保任，一直到我们证悟成佛为止。那么在弥勒日巴祖师也有讲说，他是如何的来修持菩提心，如何的这个保任的。那这个就是菩提心的这个重要。
It says, when you train in bodhicitta, then all virtues, the results of all virtues become like a wish-fulfilling tree, like a good tree. So even if it blooms once, it will always continue inexhaustibly, will continue to bloom. There is no end to it. It will never dry out or wither. So it's just like that if you have cultivated bodhicitta. And as a result, finally, you become an embodiment of bodhicitta, which is the state of enlightenment. There is no other Buddha than that. Also in the Gongchik, it says that what we call the Buddha, a Buddha is a manifestation of bodhicitta.
那在入行论里面有讲到说，我们如何来训练我们的菩提心，这是一切善的结果，就好像一棵满愿树一样，它开花一次就会继续开花，即使在干旱的季节也不会枯萎。我们修行就应该如此修，一直到菩提心能够充满了我们全身。那在这个吉天松公祖师的这个共齐正法一义，他也有讲到说，佛陀就是菩提心的显现。
So that's why it's so important really to make an effort in cultivating bodhicitta. And Garshan Rinpoche, he always says that to us. He always tells us, practice the 37 bodhisattva practices. He always tells us that over and over again. That's the practice of the bodhisattvas, because it is so important. And so, especially as Buddhists, we should cultivate bodhicitta from the bottom of our hearts and really sincerely and genuinely engage in the practice of bodhicitta. So it is not something like a task that you kind of complete a day, but you should always practice it. It's not like, okay, five times I cultivate a bodhicitta, that's enough for now, or 7 times. You should be insatiable when it comes to cultivating bodhicitta. You should cultivate it again and again until all coarse thoughts have become calmed down completely. So until then, we should practice without distraction. And that's also key, because sometimes we do practice, but we are quite distracted. So we think that we are meditating or practicing something, but really we are actually totally forgetting about what you're practicing, and we are distracted. So it's important to also sustain a continuum of mindfulness.
所以这个如此来修菩提心是很重要，这也就是噶千仁波切常常提醒我们，佛子行37颂的重要性，因为他总是这样反复的提醒我们这个重要。这个特别是我们是身为佛教徒来讲，这个点是很重要。我们应该从自心里面真正的要发心来修持菩提心。他修持菩提心不是一项工作可以在1天完成，或者说你修5次啊、7次这样就够的，而是要时时刻刻来修持一种不止息，好像永不满足的这种渴望，这样从也如。一直到这个粗的烦恼能够得到调伏，能够安住在这个更好的境界之中，所以我们要保任这种正念觉知，然后不分心的来修持菩提心。
And so then, when there are still coarse afflictive emotions, like this endless chain of afflictive emotions and thoughts arising in the mind. So one should cultivate bodhicitta first, and then visualize yourself as the Yidam deity, and at the heart visualize the root guru, in essence the root guru, and in appearance the Buddha Vajradhara. And the reason we visualize the Buddha Vajradhara is because the ordinary root guru we might see him to possess qualities and faults both. But it's better to visualize a Buddha that is free from all faults and only possesses good qualities. So that's why we visualize the appearance of Vajradhara, but the nature of the root guru. So then after you have visualized that, then you meditate, resting as long as you can in this unfabricated natural state of the mind. And at the end, you dedicate. So this is actually how we practice the 5-fold path of Mahamudra. And ultimately that leads to enlightenment. So the key point of this path is
所以呢，我们在心中还有出烦恼的时候，我们就是要对治法，就是要修持菩提心。那我们要观自身为本尊，在自己的心中有我们自己根本上师的这个本质，但是外相是金刚总持。你可能会问说，为什么是要观金刚总持？的原因是因为如果说我们把上师观成为凡夫身的话，那我们可能认为说他是有过患的，因为他不过是一个凡夫，所以我们要观的就是一个佛的形象，然后在如此禅修久久的安住在这种不造作的心的状态、本然的状态之中，在这一坐的坐默，在这个回向，那就是所谓的修大手印五之道这样子修能够一直帮助我们得到证悟。那这边最主要的要点就是还是要保持我们的菩提心。
So regarding the conduct, all conduct being left-sided. So for example, when you get up in the morning, you would first step out of your bed, get up on your left leg first, and then you would, for example, touch your food or any kind of whatever you're touching it or you kind of picking it up with your left hand. And the reason is because it is said that generally the right side is related to method or skillful means, and the left side is related to wisdom. And so if you habituate to this left-sided conduct, then that will also be conducive in increasing wisdom. Also, actually, it is said that when the winds are trained so that they only flow through the left nostril, that actually, because it's related to wisdom, will actually lead to the generally accomplishing one's activities much easier. But of course, if we are not really trained in the winds practices, in retaining the winds, then it will be a little bit difficult to have all the winds flow only through the left side, the left nostril. But anyways, just to show that in this way, things are accomplished more successfully because the left side is related to wisdom. So that's that. And then also we should confess every day without letting a day pass by. So every day in the evening, before you go to sleep, you should perform and recite the 100-syllable Vajrasattva mantra, for example, 21 times. And that will help to purify all or any negativity that you have committed on that day. If you do not confess it on the same day, if you just let it kind of a day pass by and so on, then as time goes by, it will become more and more difficult to purify this negativity. So that's why it's important to purify, to confess it on the very same day. And so you should reflect in the evening, just before you go to sleep. You think about your day. You think about, have I done good things or bad things? And whatever negative you have done, you should confess it. And whatever positive you have done, you can rejoice in that and then also dedicate it.
那至于刚刚所讲到说一切行止都是在左边，就比如说在起床的时候用左脚先着地，那用左手来拿东西或来拿食物，是为什么这样子？因为我们一般认为右手是跟方便是有相关的，而左手相对的是智慧。所以如果说我们能够以习惯用左边的话，能够增加我们的智慧。但是如果说你是一个有练气持气的人的话，你也可以就是让气在你的左边的鼻孔进出，那这就是因为它对应的是这个智慧气，那这样就对应的是智慧，这样就能让我们所做比较容易承办。但是如果说我们还没有学怎么样来练气或持气的话，要把它放在左边，这当然是不容易的事。只是说我这样说明是说，一般有练气持气的人的话，如果能够靠左边，那这样就比较能够成就智慧。另外一件事很重要要做的就是每天要忏悔，一天都不要那个跳掉。那每天我们晚上睡觉前应该自己在持诵金刚百字明21次，大家自然能够净化一切当天所做的一些过患。如果说我们不去忏悔的话，长久时间下来，我们要净化这些恶行恶业就更难了。所以我们睡觉前应该反省当天所做的一切善与不善之行。如果有善行的话，我们自己应该发起随喜之心，并且加以回向。如果一些不善行的话，应该加以忏悔。
어디나 상제 경호 군들이 토비요 삼아. 니마제 상제 있나? 어서봐. 어떤 상제 있나는데 상제 좀 되는데 뭐는 다 공이라 대대가 야고를 상대가 봐 상보를 상대 전주 상보다 어서봐. 어디는 다 중국 김바도 저 전바도 시기에서 대한 거를 전시에서 야고 된. 어제 많이 와치 거를. 지로야 서서 공항 걸 와치네. 근데 전주 시거를 o yarın olma, yarın olsun sordu. Tam Mart'tan soru burası. O da televizyon oyuncu nyamaya sesi çemba konu oyuncu mu konu doğru burası. O da nato çemba yungu mu var sesi ise televizyon. O da amin jomunda. Pento mere zamanında oldu. 我当时说怕让一个干着个的，先把那什么，我真的是他们在那，我这当然说真的去年呢第一次呢，这是来了我的啊，第一次我讲说我大把当着过了，下次当着过的，可我他在忙活时光嘛说，我用我这个年呢，现在人在开头着的呢，我怎么当着巧了哇。这提个呢，一开始那很多这边来看来的呢，来看提个哪了。내가 가리나 테라 마이가 심바 남포 마추 테라 마이가 지데 내 공도 남포 심바 그 마추 디스 공도 네스가 핑게를 정도와 예샤 아 그시마 정도와
후타시든 소리 후타시
후타시서 다 요사로 거나 본가세
롬마라
성지 도마다 성지님 뭐 로로가 와줘 라 부분도 들어도 이제 처반다 진도 상지 로로가 와줘 성지 지금은 싫어 알아 풀지
아 콘도 말이야 진짜
로로가 성지 로로가 와지 봐我这提纲我写出来不错第二次上去처반다
로로가 와지 띵띵아 yung alam ko maraba la ko re
la ko ya ma ya chana ha
yang
do this
alas so yeah so then there is this in one instruction on the Buddha gave on training with the winds, so basically based on our natural breath, our inhale and exhalation, and that comes actually from a book that was written by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's called The Ancient Path of the White Clouds. So in there is an instruction that I encountered and I found it very beneficial, especially for beginning practitioners. And so the instruction came from the Buddha himself, and he gave that instruction to his son Rahula and another disciple, Tashi. So they had received, they were the two ones who had not yet directly received this instruction on practicing with the winds from the Buddha before, but anyways, they tried to train in that, but then when they had actually received the instructions on that by the Buddha, and they, so then really, how can you say, maybe click with them. So basically the point is that there is an actual instruction given by the Buddha, and they felt very unfortunate. So this is the instruction. So the Buddha said, first you have to be mindful and conscientious. So there needs to be a state of mental vigilance first. So without distraction, you must be in an undistracted state of mindfulness without becoming controlled or kind of carried away by forgetfulness and all kinds of thoughts. So then you are in this undistracted state, and all you need to do is be aware of the breath flowing through you. So you're inhaling, you must feel that. And when you're exhaling, you must take notice of that. So you must be mindful of your inhalation and mindful of your exhalation. When we are really vigilant about the exhalation and inhalation, the breath and the air flows through as you inhale and exhale, the Buddha said no other thoughts will arise within you. So just naturally, there won't be any distraction once you have this kind of sharp and clear awareness. All distractions will just naturally stop. So actually it seems that this is maybe a practice that's a bit easier to do, because it's anyways it's something that we can do, because anyways we are always breathing. There's never a time where you're not breathing. So since you're breathing anyways, you might as well make it Dharma practice. So it just depends how you view your breathing. It could become meditation practice. People whose activities, ordinary activities, become meditation. Now, some people, whatever they do, whatever thing they do it with complete focus, and they are not distracted by a single thought. And actually we can say that at that time their mind really is in a meditative state. So anyways, this practice with the focusing on the breath without distraction is very beneficial for no other thoughts to arise.
那对于这个如何来练，我们的有一个指引，就是配合我们自然的这个呼吸。那这个在这个越南的这个一行禅师 Thich Nhat Hanh 他写的这个白云古道也有写到这一点。那我们的子贡法王也常常引用这个白云古道这本书。那么回到这个主本所讲的这个他这本这个白云古道主要是引用佛陀的这个法教。当初佛陀对于他的儿子罗祜罗以及另外一个弟子扎喜来这个教他们如何持气。那这个是一个非常实际的这个法要，是法教，因为是非常好用的，因为我们这个主要就是要保持我们的正念跟一个醒觉的醒觉的这种状态，不分心不忘事不分心。再来呢，第二步就是注意我们的呼吸的进出的气息进出然后觉受这种吐纳。那如果我们能够专心一致我们呼吸的话，我们自然就不容易分心。那这是一种明觉的这种状态，我们的散心杂念自然就会止息。这个是一个易行道，这个很容易修行的方法。为什么呢？因为我们时时都得呼吸，不呼吸我们就活不了了，所以不如把它用来做修行之用的工具。有些人的日常行事呢，都好像在禅定当中非常的专注不分心。那么这个如果说我们能够观呼吸的话，那我们自然而然就慢慢的没有其他的这个杂念，他的妄念就这样升起了。
Yeah. Right. So you sustain mindfulness, and so then when a strong thought arises and you're able to cut through the thoughts through mindfulness, so then that shows that you have gained some stability in mindfulness. And so slowly you increase your ability to abide with mindfulness. So you start with a shorter session, and then as you familiarize yourself, you expand the session longer and longer. You try to stay within a state of mindfulness longer and longer. And eventually, as a result, you will see the nature of the mind. It will help you see the nature of the mind. So basically, you are fully aware of the inhalation and the exhalation. And eventually, when you habituate to that, it just happens naturally. So effortlessly, without even having to try to meditation just becomes easier. And you just are completely aware of what is happening. For example, sometimes when you're focusing on your breath, then the breath is longer. So then you are aware of a longer breath. It just happens naturally. You don't make it longer. And sometimes it's just naturally shorter, but you're just aware of this. Just the breath is shorter and so on. So in this way, you just habituate to a state of non-distraction as you meditate, and eventually the state of samadhi, of meditative absorption, will arise. So this is quite important, actually, this kind of technique of practicing. And you can also practice it, for example, in whatever else you do. For example, there is a way of practicing meditation when you're walking. Then you're fully aware of the steps you take, the walking. But if you can't do that, you can also then come back to the breath and focus on the breath. It's the same. So we call it the breath, or also the winds. You focus on this wind flow, the airflow as you're breathing.
那在这样子能够我们观我们的呼吸的话，这是能够帮助我们保任我们的这个正念。当我们念头升起的时候，马上用正念来关照，把这些念头给它斩除。 那慢慢的就是让我们的正念能够更加的这个稳固，那慢慢的来保持这个正念，从一开始比较短的时间到后来能够保持一个比较长的这个时间，那就近能够帮助我们能更容易看到我们自己的心性。当我们完全了知我们的呼吸、吐气、呼吸跟吐纳的时候，那这个反复把它串习，就让它变成很自然而然的这个观照的状态，那我们禅修就变得非常的容易，我们的觉察力也就能够提升。有的时候我们呼吸就比较长，这是很自然的状态，不是我们刻意的，我们能够了知。有的时候我们气息比较短，我们也能够了知我们气息比较短。总之就是安住在一个不分心的一个状态，非常自然的个禅定就能够自然的升起。那么除了观我们的呼吸之外，也可以平常所行所做所成为我们禅修禅定的这个所依。比如说有些人是用那个正念，在走路的时候保持正念来走路的，那这个道理跟安住在呼吸、安住在我们的气息是相同相似的。
For meditation, you practice mindfulness is most important. That is a vigilance, a mindful vigilance. If you are not mindful, then you are not meditating. And if you are mindful, then your meditation increases. So now let's meditate for a few minutes.
所以呢，最重要的就
focusing on
是
our
我们
breath.
在禅修的过程当中，保持正念是很重要的。我们有正念，自然我们能够觉察；如果没有正念，我们失去觉察，自然就不能讲到禅定了。现在我们大家一起来禅修片刻。
Kare chaba res yore kare ina.
Lặp sao?
Tare tindra na oge kisu da da. Chira la maso.
Nãy Thịnh.
Sobi ke la maso.
Đi có lát làm sao?
Dan sani china mare.
Đi kerang Thịnh lại đi kerang cover đi microphone. Đi kerang microphone đi lại bằng Thịnh.
Mare ma chaba da yo. Mấy cô mà
ngã lặp xuống nè.
Mare không做chaba chile da china这个月什么吃松。맞지 와 대신에 개조로 봐.
내가 야 나한테 장이 뭐 또 옛날에 기초 그래.
말에 처럼나 라미 하고 막 손에 강테 예전에 가지고 말에 개조라 하고 그런가 나이가. 뭐 신바드는 저같이 진지게 왜스라 그래.
네, 진짜 콘서트라나 카톨라요 그래.
가지고 사서 있어라 손도 다 뒤에서 히라요 삼아봐.
Nga chỉ qua.
Anh sẽ chỉ nói anh sẽ hiện thực công tác thuế số hiện mình sang
Yeah. So we were just talking about. I'm thinking. Rupen thought that I mentioned, or someone mentioned that we will have questions. But I don't remember mentioning that to him. But maybe you mentioned that to him. That we had questions. But anyways, what was the thing with questions? Anyway, said that maybe today is a bit late. He didn't think about it, but if you are thinking about questions, then we can also do it tomorrow.
那刚刚这个伊娜这个英文口译跟主本在这个讨论，主本以为伊娜说有这个问题讨论的时间，但是今天时间已经很晚了，所以今天没时间。如果大家有问题的话，明天或许可以找出一些时间来这个讨论。所以讲中文的法友，如果你们有什么疑问，要在这个提出来，请提前写讯息到这个微信或者是 LINE 的群组，这样我可以帮你们把它事先传给这个伊娜，请至少在开讲之前的2个钟头给我，这样子或许他们比较有时间来做反应，好吗？我们现在要准备做结行了。明天一样的时间，就是美国西岸是4点45开讲，亚洲是7点45。殊胜菩提心妙宝，未生起者愿生起，已生起者已不退，其言辗转更增上，所知遍照遍智法之尊，缘起接触自在只供八仁谦八之教法遍有记，讲修愿由闻思修持之。谢谢各位。
Thank you. Thank you. 谢谢。
同样的，明天4点45，亚洲早上7点45开讲。
Thank you, everybody.
Maybe Sophia want to say something. Should I stop?
现在他要请法的人讲几句话。请法的人是墨西哥的 Sophia。
And then if you agree, we could do a final session with questions, maybe the final day. If you
Sophia, at the beginning of
Sophia 是要建议说，或许第5的所有的问题保留到最后一天来问。
Okay, I said that if you want, at the end of the teachings, we can leave the questions at the end. Is that okay?
On the last day, yeah.
The last day.
他讲的是说，可以这个问题讨论可以留在最后一天。
Save some time for questions.
我想他本来是要讲说这个。
Does mean we're gonna extend more time on last day after last day teaching, or you want another day?
if he needs the last day to finish the teachings, we can give teachings and an extra session for questions.
他们现在的讨论是要加最后一天要增加时间，还是要加一天多加一天来讲讨论呢？ 两者都可以。
Okay, thank you, Lama.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
谢谢各位，各位晚安，各位早安，明天同一时间见。 那如果有什么疑问的话，其实今天到明天之间是写进来很好的时间，因为这可以提前给伊娜，那她就可以给主奔，他们可以事先做准备。谢谢各位，明天见。
Thank you.
Lama, Tasidele.